Greetings, comic book fans. This is H.H. German coming to you from the greatest city in the world. That is New York City, and you know who I am. I am the creator of Here Comes Calico from Sigma Comics. And today we're going to talk about a horrible fellow who finally was apprehended. And that guy is the Gilgo Beach Killer. Alright, we're going to talk about the Gilgo Beach Killer. Before I get into that, I'm going to take a swig of the Calico mug. Always good. Alright, let's talk about this cretin. So this guy's a serial killer who decided it was a good idea to start killing young ladies in the Long Island area, Long Island, New York area. For those of you who aren't privy to this this area, this is a suburb just outside of New York City. It is due east of the lower portion of New York City, extending out into Queens, Brooklyn, Queens, and out into the counties of Nassau and Suffolk. All right, so Long Island, as its moniker suggests, is a rather long island. It's fairly stretched out, and to the north and south are pretty extensive beach systems there. So this fellow here, the Gilgo Beach Killer, is going around killing young. I'm pretty sure they were. Most of them, if not all, were prostitutes. I think most of them were. And they unfortunately met their final moments at the hands of this just pathetic individual going around killing these women. I know they caught a fellow. His name is Rex Heerman, or Hoorman. That's the fellow they caught for this. He has not been convicted of this crime yet, so as of now he is a suspect in the crime, so we can't definitively, or at least I certainly can't call him the killer as of yet, because he has not been criminally convicted for these crimes. And this is not to say that there are people in prison right now that have been falsely convicted. However, based on all the data that we can see at this moment, it looks like they have some DNA. And let me tell you, you can fool anybody up there on the stand, but let me tell you one thing you can't fool, and that's science. Science is unequivocal. It is by definition factual. Okay? So yeah, you can have scientists that can most certainly spin the data to fit a narrative, but once you have actual DNA on a slide, okay, on a test slide, and it has been found in another place in addition to various other pieces of evidence. See, that's the key. It's not just that you have the DNA, but if you have some of these other things, like your cell phone was mapped to that area at that particular time, your car was found and or seen, there's visual, there's people who can ID you there, etc., etc. All these things factor in. And again, I don't think any one of those things on their own is necessarily strong enough to yield a conviction, although there certainly have been cases where even those things were used to get the convictions. But once you start factoring in all of those things, and all those things are present, there's a damn good chance that you got the right person, right? This is just common sense. Anyway, that's where we are right now. They have found an individual, this gentleman here, or this individual I should say. I certainly wouldn't call him a gentleman if he is in fact the person who did these things. But we have a suspect there, and as it is, he fits the general description that I that I sort of, just as a sort of Monday morning quarterback kind of, person, with respect to this industry, certainly. I figured on somebody who's going to be in their late, somewhere, in the late 30s or 40s or 50s, just, a mature adult, possibly somebody working in a professional occupation that involved a lot of sort of math and science, and sort of an introvert, not somebody who really was outlandish, somebody who sort of kept with themselves, and that's sort of the description. Now, I'm going on this without any detective, or police, detective skills. I've read lots of books on forensics, lots of books on villainy and crime, a lot of crime detective novels, and both fiction and nonfiction. I was a big fan of the early FBI profiling techniques that were performed on some of these serial killers back in the 70s, the late 60s and 70s, and I forget the profiler's name. His name's John. I forget his name, but there are quite a few books out there, and I know one in particular. I think it was called Profiling or Forensics, something like that, or Forensic Profiling. I did read that book, and it was very insightful. And I read these books because I've always been fascinated by this conflict, the good versus evil. And of course, as many of you know who are comic book fans and readers, that's one of the essential key components of comic book creation, is the fundamental understanding of the whole fight of good versus evil, and that conflict creation in comics, right? So conflict is essential in comic book storytelling. Okay, there has to be the good component, the bad component, and the search for justice to try to bring the baddies into the light, and bring justice for the evil that was done in the book, right? So anyway, so that was the appeal for me. And again, I've always approached that concept in a very substantive way, and of course educating myself. Again, I'm not somebody who has a criminal detective background, education. I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York City. So I mean, my experience with crime was more on the streets and actually seeing it happen. Outside of reading about it in books. So of course I got into some scuffles. I'm a former prize fighter, and let's just say I got to tussle with some pretty shady characters, and we can leave it at that. But that's always interested me, the villainy of humanity, right? And the few people that are brave enough to confront this malice face to face with knowledge, and that's the key. You can there are people that try to fight against these bad guys, and a lot of it is just sheer will, and just the knowing that what these assholes are doing is just a terrible thing, but they don't have the wherewithal and the faculty to successfully overcome these people, these bullies, right? So as a kid, I fought often, and let me tell you, I didn't win a lot of these fights, especially early on. In my case, it wasn't necessarily because I wasn't skilled. In fact, I actually did have some fights where I was very technical early on. A lot of the times where I wasn't successful, it's where I was actually overcome by fear, because the circumstance was such that there were additional layers of the danger. Okay, case in point, it would be maybe somebody was approaching me and being antagonistic. Let's say, a bully or something as a kid. But there were other individuals around there that may have presented problems. So, it's a very difficult situation when you're a kid, being surrounded with a malevolent element. And you're unable to overcome. But thankfully, I had enough of those experiences that over time I became very good at overcoming them. And now I can address pretty much any situation that involves a confrontation pretty successfully. And it's because I've had enough experience, and that's the key with this. The police and the detectives, the military, whatever you want to, whatever professional organization that engages with malice at that high level, they're also very well trained. And in their case, certainly in the police, FBI, etc., they have, in addition to the physical components, i.e., weaponry, the physical skills and strategy to go in and neutralize situations, and of course extraction. They also they're aided by an actual organization with rules and processes, right? So they were able to get, in this case, I'm not sure who was it that finally zeroed in on this guy, the FBI, or in tandem with the police, were able to find this particular fellow here and bring him in, at least the suspect. So my understanding is there hasn't been one of these murders in quite some time, so it remains to be seen. I think the trial is set for later this year, 2023, or certainly next year, 2024. So we'll see what happens with this trial. But they caught the fellow here, and the reason I'm talking about it is because, again, this does pertain to comic book storytelling. And if you look at some of the writers of yesteryear, they certainly were, interested in learning about the criminals of the day. If you look at, for instance, the Dick Tracy strips, you could definitely see references to a lot of the gangster characters of that day and earlier. And certainly you see it in the writings of Steve Ditko with Spider-Man and some of the characters that he created on that series that were certainly inspired by a lot of the criminal elements. You look at someone like Tombstone, certainly inspired by some of the gangsters of the day, back in the 30s and into the 50s, etc. And obviously a criminal element like the Kingpin, someone who is a head figure, a godfather sort of gangster figure, street crime boss. So you look at all these characters that are put out by these villainous characters that are put out by Marvel and DC, and a lot of them find their roots, at least inspirationally, by the villains of the day. And certainly serial killers are found, are studied by writers, including, just many writers. It's not just comic book writers, but, fiction writers like, Stephen King, John Grisham, etc. So it's always important as a writer, and this is really advice for you young up-and-coming writers now, to stay current on what's happening out there in the sort of good versus evil front. There's inspiration everywhere, and don't limit yourself to one thing. Go out there. We live in the information age, and it's a wonderful thing to be in, because there's information at your fingertips. Within seconds, you can do research on any interesting, colorful character out there in the world. And you can learn all about that character. Maybe you get inspiration. Maybe it can give you an idea that can be the cornerstone for a brilliant saga, right? So this is what you have. Stay current. Read up on what's out there. Be inspired. Go out in the world and check out the world, because there's a lot of stuff out there and to keep track of. Anyway, just wanted to talk about the Gilgo Beach killer and what he was doing here in the Long Island area, or I should say around, because I'm not really here in the Long Island area. I'm in the New York City area, so just outside of the New York City area. They caught a suspect, so let's see what happens to him. And the story is still unfolding. We still don't know what all he did. There could be, dozens of bodies that they find, or eventually he might maybe confess to. Who knows? So if this is in fact the guy. Anyway, that's it for today. Here Comes Calico issue 7 is on Kickstarter, so give us a shot. I really think you're going to love it. If you're a fan of comics, again, good versus evil storytelling, I really think you're going to love this series. But guess what? We have a lot of assholes, and unfortunately, we do have inspiration from real world bad guys in our series as well. All right, so you can learn about our series, Here Comes Calico, which is a comic book series dedicated to fighting animal abuse through comics. On Kickstarter, we have that Kickstarter, and you can do a search on Kickstarter by just typing in Here Comes Calico once you're on the Kickstarter website, and click on Back This Project for our Here Comes Calico project, and then of course you hit the Back It button, and then the Back This Project button, and then the select the rewards, and you'll be good from there. Hit subscribe, hit like, and keep on fighting for animals.